Welcome to Birds of a Feather. This is your girl, AJ, the Suburban Princess here. Not talking Eagles. I've decided I want to pick people's brains. Some are Eagle fans, some are not. With the bye finally ending, and we don't know if they're definitely having a game Sunday because of the Rona. I figured I'd talk to people who I admire, and this is another friend of mine who's no longer just a virtual friend. He is my buddy, ERock. How are you doing, sweetie?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on your show here, and it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know well, no, I think I've seen you before that, but I always go back to the commercial we did on that boat down.
Mm-hmm.
That was the probably the best day ever for
That was
someone
fun.
last minute hanging
That
out
was
on the boat
fun.
with everybody. That was very fun. It probably could have even been more fun if we had more license, but that's later in the life. But anyway, thank you for doing this because Birds of a Feather is more than just a show now about me venting about my feelings about the Eagles. I've decided it should also cross paths with everybody going through similar experiences, especially with 2020 kind of making everybody, you know, have to deal with stuff at one time. Because if you're not dealing with Corona, or you know somebody with Corona, or you're quarantined, or you're not quarantining, everything in 2020 has basically slapped us all in the face. And it's also starting to creep into our sports life. So, first question I wanted to ask, and I think it's kind of makes sense now with the Eagles playing. Now that our team is not really doing that great, but we're still number one in the division. Um, does it make a difference now that sports is still happening amidst all these corona, flare ups, or do you kind of feel like now I kind of wish we hadn't even kickstarted the NFL season?
Well, I mean, we are a people of a very short memory. And, when there was no sports, when the NBA had to shut down, when the NHL had to shut down, and baseball was delayed, it really made life a lot more difficult. And not that it's any less difficult right now than it was back then, but at least we have temporary distractions that are sports.
Hmm.
And even though the Eagles are struggling, granted, they are at the top of dumpster fire mountain, and, that is the NFC East. So, we're thankful for that. At least we have something to bitch about that isn't I gotta wear these masks, or the restaurants aren't open, or where the hell did all the toilet paper go, or I can't go to the grocery store, or I ran out of hand sanitizer and stuff like that. Part of me tends to think that again, we are a people of very short memories. I'm hoping that when this thing is all over and the vaccine's made, and they like we will look back at 2020 and being like, remember that shit? That
Yeah.
sucked. That was
Yeah.
terrible. But we just move on.
Right.
One thing I hope we don't do is if this coronavirus thing has taught us anything, and a lesson that I hope sticks with all of us, is that let's not take the easy stuff for granted. Let's not take our friends for granted. Let's not take our family for granted. Let's not take the basic things that we just took for granted. Everything, for like, I haven't seen a concert in
Right.
forever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know when I'm ever going to see a show again.
I did a
Movie.
virtual one. It's not the same.
I did too, but it's not the same. It's like watching YouTube. I watched it,
Facts.
but it's not. I miss going to the movies. I miss tailgating. I miss just everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you kind of tailgating obviously was something that obviously I knew through you guys with Fourth and John. I'd never tailgated in my life. I always watched games on TV, so I never really knew that experience until I got to know you guys, and that has definitely been a fun experience. One thing about sports now, I'm realizing, like you said, it doesn't really take away the frustration that is also built up around this time of year. Normally it's the stress from the holidays, but because of the election and because of everything that happened this summer with the protests and everything that just kept blowing up, it seemed like every freaking day. What is one thing that you've learned? Now, me being a black female, it's obviously different from you being a white male, but what do you feel like this whole political unrest kind of exposed about us as a people this year?
I, I, I think it exposed the ugly nature of people. And I had to explain, like, I don't know if you get too political on this show, and even I don't like getting political
I
on,
don't either, but it's been a pot.
you know,
Let it go.
it is what it is. And I had to explain to my kids, they're like, why don't you like Donald Trump? And I said, it's not that I disagree with everything the man says. I disagree with 90% of it, but I don't disagree with everything the man says. And I don't disagree with all of his policy either. I disagree with 90% of it, but I don't disagree with all of it.
Right.
I had to explain to my kids that that man brought out the worst in people in both sides.
Yep.
It emboldened the racists in this country to the point where they felt comfortable spouting off that shit,
Mm-hmm.
and it emboldened the radical left to counteract that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what Antifa was until Donald Trump became president.
Right.
I didn't know what the Proud Boys were
Right.
until Donald Trump became president. So the reason and this is how I explained it to them. The reason I dislike him is because he brings out the worst in either side. And in a time where we have the coronavirus and we have this social unrest and we have all of this, boy, that's just gasoline on the fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I know it's coming from a different place, being a white male instead of being an African American female. I know it's coming from a different place, but I try to see it as best I can through your eyes and through
Mm-hmm.
Gail's eyes, and through everybody, and listen to the stories and try to learn. Gail's told me stories that I didn't even know existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to really kind of keep my own perspective in check, not only being a white male, being the son of a state trooper,
Right.
being the brother of a cop,
Mm-hmm.
knowing I can tell you, AJ, I've never gotten nervous when getting pulled over. I've never gotten scared. In fact, I've gotten out of all, I'm 38 years old. You get your license when you're 17 in New Jersey. I've gotten out of every ticket except one in my life. So I don't know that experience,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm trying to understand it.
Mm-hmm. That's the most that people would need to do. And you're right, it has caused both extremes to develop. And I think myself, I didn't realize how isolated I was as a Black female until this stuff started popping up. And it made me realize how much research I need to do myself as a Black person, and knowing how much hurt it and where it started and to where it's building up now. And I feel like it's such a, I shouldn't say easy fix, but I just feel like it's a simple ask of humility, and for people to just stop talking over each other and just listen. And I happened to sit through an IG live between these two poets on Monday night, and it made me realize, like, God, if we would just stop, like, bringing up old shit and just deal with the real, everything comes down to fear. Everything is down to what you think might happen, what is perceived to be the truth. There's nothing really about what's actually true. And that ignorance, fueled with anger, is creating a lot of this disconnect. And it's funny, like you said, like Trump came in and he could probably say anything, and then people who are that feeble minded will follow it no matter what, how you pull it. We went from Barack, who was all about everybody's, equal, to this dude who those scared people who still felt marginalized jumped to and created this whole wall again, literally a wall of ignorance. And I think the things I realized too was that my self worth was not hardly as strong when I was growing up as it is now. And it's weird how I felt more empowered this year than I ever have in my 42 years. And that's sad, because there's, as much as I would love to believe I've been always been this strong Black woman and ooh, I'm so sexy and all this stuff. No.
You've
Growing
always been sexy, AJ.
Thank you. But it's
Also,
different when you when you turn your 40s, you know how it is. It does something to you, especially because I never wanted kids. I never envisioned myself married. I was so conceited at times, thinking I'm just going to be a big actress and I won't need anybody. And, I have a dad that loves me to death and thinks I'm the greatest thing. And I wasn't doing shit then. And my mom, loves me, but she's really down to earth and practical. So she'll always kind of knock me down, a certain size. But I think that when you grow up with a good upbringing with both parents, I guess their goal is to make sure that I don't get um, influenced by that. But the problem was it kind of did the opposite and it made me totally ignorant, totally isolated. I used to be scared to just go in the city. I used to be scared to go into Center City. My dad would have all these horror stories of how he got his radio stolen, broken into his car several times, and all this crap. So it kind of created this kind of glass thing around my head that I kind of was just always like, oh, I don't want to go here. I don't. Now it's like I don't want to be in the burbs. Like now I feel the opposite. I feel like the burbs are really isolating compared to the city. Now I'm in the city and I feel like I'm alive and I feel like I'm like, what have I been doing for like 10 plus years? And I'm just thankful that I grew up that way. But my other question for you too is marriage. I was asking actually Gail this question. I said marriage is something that for some reason is not valued as much as it used to. And my parents divorced almost 12 years ago, and that was just weird because they've always been married. But people do grow apart. What is your overall look like now in this year and going forward? What do you think is missing as to what made marriage such a sacred thing? And now it's just kind of like, people do it, but you don't have to. What is your take?
I'm probably the wrong guy to answer that question, to be honest with you.
Why?
'Kay, Jackie and I have known each other since we were in 5th grade.
Hmm.
We reconnected in college. Um, wow, this is personal stories. This is
Well, I mean, do you feel? I don't want to get too deep, but
no,
do
no,
you
no, no.
still feel like it's sacred?
You kind of got to know the background of it.
Okay.
I was engaged to somebody else.
Hmm.
Uh, we bought a house with another guy, and simultaneously things kind of fell apart for both of us. We were always very close friends, and we tried immediately after, trying to do a relationship, and she wasn't over what she was going through. I wasn't over what I was going through,
Hmm.
and um, we kind of she ghosted me, and I didn't speak to her again, and that's when I moved to Philadelphia, and I spent that 3 years in Center City,
Hmm.
and then we reconnected. We ended up having Reese. I called Jackie my wife. I refer to Jackie as my wife, and you might not even know we're not married.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's why I
No,
probably asked. No,
we,
I
we
didn't.
never got married. Things just kind of progressed, and we had kids, and kids are expensive, and we just
Yes.
you know just never bothered with it.
Hmm.
So my advice to people with marriage is just, kind of do what works for you.
Right.
My parents just renewed their vows on their 40th wedding anniversary. Her parents are
Oh,
we have two beautiful kids together. We've been together for, I mean, we don't have an anniversary, but I mean, like,
yeah.
13, 14 years,
Hmm.
and we never got married. So my message to people is, just do what feels comfortable to you. Do what feels right. You don't need to get married to know you have a life partner, uh,
Hmm.
to know that you're teammates with somebody. But if you want to get married, do that. Like I think there's less of an importance this day and age because it's paperwork and it's a financial commitment, and you two are now legally paired at the hip.
Hmm.
Whereas, you know, Jackie and I, we've outlasted most of the weddings that we've gone to. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, just do what works for you.
Hmm.
You have to get married. I always find it funny when people are like, "Oh, I'm being pressured into being married." I'm like, just be pressured into. Don't feel pressure. Just be
Right.
together. If it's right, it's
Yeah.
right. Right, it's not right.
Yeah, I do always wonder, and I guess it's easier said than done because I've never been in a lot of what you call true relationships. I've been in what I'm calling situationships. Okay. And
Nice.
it was a song. I think that Snow Allegra chick has a song called Situationships, maybe somewhere. But um it's just never something that's really occurred to me to actually be with the same person for a long period of time because I'm always in my head thinking, well, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna do. And then now in my 40s, I just thought thinking to myself, what if I'm in a relationship and I don't know how to be in one? You know what I mean? Because I'm so used to being by myself. And and then I started to kid myself and think, well, all I wanted, I always wanted my bills paid and somebody to, rub my feet. Like
Yeah,
that's
but that's
that's where I started kidding myself.
single people have a very skewed relationship on what a long-standing relationship actually is.
Yeah.
And it's not rubbing the feet or paying the bills. I mean, that's a myth. That's an urban legend. That doesn't happen. Being in a relationship is tough, and you have to find somebody who matches your personality.
Right.
Okay, if you're you and you're used to kind of doing you, and you're used to and that's not a selfish thing, putting you first, or exploring your passions, and kind of putting numero uno as numero uno. Guess what? Eventually you're going to find somebody who's the same exact way as you, and
Mhm.
sharing each other's joy. If anything, you're going to find out that you find somebody who is more than capable of making themselves happy by themselves, and you can make yourself happy by yourself, and then together you share in each other's happiness. In other
Right.
words,
Okay.
fail,
Mhm.
in my opinion and in my observation, I like to think that I have a little experience with this.
Mhm.
Relationships fail because the other person thinks that their significant other is in charge or responsible for making them happy, and that is not true. You ultimately are in charge of making you happy,
Mhm.
and that other person is ultimately in charge of making them happy. And what you do is hold hands and you walk in step together. If somebody's falling behind, you can pull them, and if you're falling behind, they'll pull you, but you can't expect someone else to do the heavy lifting all the entire time. Somebody else will never be in charge of your personal happiness. So if anything, you are ahead of the game because you know how to make you happy, and you will
Yeah,
eventually somebody who knows how to make themselves happy, and then you can just be happy together.
that's true. I mean, I've kind of realized I'm blessed in that sense is that I'm not trying to drag somebody into a relationship just because I don't want to be alone. Like I'm not that person.
And that
Um,
that right there is the recipe for disaster. Those who do that.
yeah. And I feel like, not all my friends, but I feel like some friends do stick with dudes just because they don't want to be alone. They can't deal with their own issues. But um and another question I have, and I'm thinking about it too with this whole year, because this whole year has brought a lot of thought, and hence the reason why I'm doing this. Um, what do you feel like you have improved on in terms of like self-help and all that stuff as far as dealing with this quarantine? Have you strengthened in some areas, or have you like, I don't know crap and I gotta start over? Like,
Oh
what did you
man.
feel like you learned about yourself or beginning to learn about yourself towards the end of this
Yeah.
horrific year?
How much time you got?
I know everybody has to think about it. That's why I said some of these end up
No,
being
no, no,
longer.
no. I went through a very. I'm a big believer in self scouting, and kind of um, evaluating your own behavior and how it's affecting you and how it's affecting other people. And I'll be honest with you, I went through a lot this quarantine. I went through a lot before the quarantine.
Mm,
Something that I, kind of came to realize is that I kind of have to stop worrying about that the happy. My whole reason for on social media, my whole purpose was to share my experience, and it began to be at the detriment of my own experience. Um, so it's refocusing on what's important in life, which was my family, my close friends, and kind of taking this I spread myself way too thin,
mm,
and then I needed to center it back in, and refocus on me, and things that make me happy, and that there was a lot of focus on again, that self scouting thing, and realizing, as far as my decision to depart forth and Jawn, um, realizing when you're tapped out, realizing when you can no longer lead,
mhm,
and realizing when it's a time for somebody else to take the reins. If you, there's that expression out there, if you love it, let it go.
mhm.
realizing when it's time to let somebody else with the fire that has been extinguished in you, if let them take the reins and let them move forward with it. And that was part of my decision with Fourth and Jawn was that I was not to steal a dick for meal line, but I was emotionally drained. I was emotionally tapped out. I
Yeah.
was fried, and I like the direction that they took it. I'm proud of the boys. I'm proud of what Gail's doing. I'm proud of Evan stepping up big time and all the rest of the gang. And they've
Evan is hilarious.
yeah, they've taken it in the direction that honestly, it was a path that I wouldn't have led them down because I didn't have that creativity or that spark or that desire to go in that direction. But I'm so glad that they did.
Hmm.
And you know, I think yeah, there was a lot of self scouting over the quarantine.
I was
Uh,
sad. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I realized something was different, and I was just like, "What's going on? Where's ERock? What's up?" And then it was like, when you see things on Twitter, you don't know where in the timeline you might have heard stuff or seen stuff, and then you're kind of like, I can't assume. So how am I going to figure out without seeming nosy? But I'm concerned.
yeah,
So I had to shoot DMs left and right because I was just like, yo, seriously, I don't like this. What is going on? And me, I only went to like two tailgates, so I'm still mad about the Mike Scott day that I fucking missed him before he got arrested. Well, in trouble. And that is my only memory besides the fact that I just loved being there. But I was always late to the freaking party because everybody was there like 8 something, 9 o'clock. And my ass takes an hour and a half to get there, like without a freaking car. I
yeah,
hate dealing with like getting there late. Like I'm only literally sitting with you guys like an hour and there's a freaking moth in this daggone room. Anyway, but yeah, that experience to me was, for me, it was just special. And it's like I knew something was going on, but you're right. They are taking it in a good direction and keeping it obviously sports centered, but sometimes it's just stupid funny sometimes too. Sometimes you just Gail allows a lot of different people coming in. He always says you're welcome to the stream and I'm like, I know, that's cool. But yeah, that you bring a certain element that everyone will be like, "Oh, no, ERock," and I was like, I know. So when you were
but
doing the beach thing, I was happy that you were doing something to put content out there.
yeah, I did a podcast on Monday with somebody, and it was a group of guys who were kind of starting off from zero, and they were asking me advice, like on camera. Like it was good to kind of because I get a lot of DMs about that. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start this. What do you have any advice to give me? Um, what was your path and stuff like that. And part of that surf fishing channel is all righty. You're pa- you're passionate about the Eagles. You started a YouTube channel in 2 years. You were picked up by the Eagles. You spent like 2.5 years with them. You started Fourth and Jawn. Within 2 years, you were signed by a network. Okay, what's it like to start from zero?
Right.
Where nobody knows who you are. No,
Yeah.
and can you do it again? Can you do it again? And I shared a story with them. I'll share with you. I was fishing off of the Manasquan Inlet rocks, and this was Saturday, and the rocks are real hard to get out. And somebody was like, "Yo, yo," and it was a dude and his son, and they go, "Hey, bro, just want to let you know we love your videos." And I paused.
Mhm.
I kind of like froze because I was
Mhm.
like, and I pointed me. They're
Mhm.
like, and I yelled back. I was like, "Football or fishing?" And the guy tilted his head like this and went, "How many rackets you got?" And I was like, "I got two. I got two now." But he recognized the fishing one.
Wow. Yeah.
He had no idea what I was talking about with the football one, and I was just so touched and that
Yeah.
was the first time I got recognized. Like you go to a game now and people, "Hey, there's ERock," but
Right.
like it's very refreshing to start from zero and try to go from there. So it's a challenge for me, and I'm actually enjoying that a lot, a lot.
I think it's very zen. I tell you one thing, the one episode I watched, it made me hungry for fish. I'll tell you that much. Because I was like, what are you eating? No, I want fish. Like, what the hell? Because I love your mom. She's very sweet. And I think I only really spoke to her maybe once or twice, but I'm like, I just love that you're very much a family centered person. and it is good to see you in a new format. It takes a while because I'm like dying for you to do something funny on like black and white or something, and be like, what the hell are the Eagles doing? You know, but I'm glad that
Yeah,
you at least put some videos on IG stories, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Give me a
I mean,
little taste.
it it's gonna cut. It's they're going to be far and few in between, and something that I promised myself is that it'll always be organic when it happens.
Mhm.
Got something today in the car, and if it just I deleted it. It felt forced. It felt like I
Yeah,
was content, and that's the worst kind of content.
right.
And so whatever I do moving forward, it's always going to be if I want to, if I'm feeling it. If I'm not, I'm just not going to do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna shift to. I always love to know what people like music wise. So, what are you peeping now music wise? Is there anything that excites you? Anything you've been listening to that you're like, oh, this is awesome. I love this.
Yeah, Major Lazer just dropped a new album.
I
I'm
did
a
hear
big
that.
reggae head. I grew up on, believe it or not, I grew up on a lot of old school dance hall music.
Oh, oh, look at you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Being a kid in Jersey, every Saturday night there was a DJ late at night that would spin, old school dance hall. And I just sit in my car and listen, or find a parking lot that I could listen to Hot 97 and just
hmm
drive around and just listen to this guy.
hmm
Uh, Grew up on a lot of beach rock, reggae, the Sublimes, the 311s of the world. And then as I began to DJ myself, the transition into Moomba, because that's kind of like the electronic
Okay.
version of reggae. It's not EDM. It's not,
Okay.
120, 30 beats per minute.
Yeah.
It's
Oh God.
very a tone between 100 and 110 beats per minute, and that's kind of like the where Major Lazer falls into.
Okay, because I know I've heard their name. Yeah, I
Yeah,
probably
they
music.
just dropped a new album, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
I was telling Gail I love the new Busta Rhymes. He did
I haven't.
EO 2.0. Yeah, I mean it's deep, but I mean the best part is the interludes of Chris Rock just cussing people out. You know, in the middle, every in between each song, each track, he's like, "You can't fuck with Busta Rhymes." You know, he's make. Then the last song, oh my God, this sorry bug. The last track is especially funny towards the end because he really creates his own song. You can tell he's just probably sitting there going like this with the piano and goes, "You can't fuck." He's just making a whole song. And I played a little bit on my IG stories because I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble with copyright, but I had to post some of it because it was I was dying listening to it. He's like, "Motherfucker." And I'm just like,
That's the other one. I would listen to old school hip hop a
oh yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah. We were talking about that too. 90s. Yeah, you can't. Mm-mm. I mean, a lot of guys are gone. You don't realize how many people have just left us, like Prodigy and
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, like they were talking about Biggie being put in the Hall of Fame this past weekend, and I'm just like, why just now? Like, hello? But yeah,
But
I mean,
the anniversary of Fife was either today or yesterday. I saw
yeah,
on
I
the
think it was
time.
today because I that's what I was telling Gil too. I was like, I think that somebody was celebrating Fife, and I was like, so it must be today that he passed. But it's crazy. It's you can't get over that time because that was such a golden time. And the mumble rappers, I don't know all the littles that are out now that I can't follow. Every
Yo,
now
that's
and then if you hear something, you're like, okay, but it sounds the same. I tried to listen to, well, no, I did like the new Nas CD is good too. I like Nas's latest CD. I mean, album, ages. But yeah, I can't get with all that stuff because it just sounds like the same crap. Like I don't even know what they're saying. I
can,
can't flow with it.
can I tell you all the littles is the reason why I quit DJing. So I was DJing this party. I think they were bussing up people from University of Delaware.
Hmm.
It was like a sorority mixer, and I'm DJing it, and it was at Lucky Strike on Walnut or Chestnut. It's somewhere in
Yeah,
San.
because we bowled there at my old job. Yeah.
People were there and they wanted to hang out with the DJ, and they're all, with their fucking TikToks or Instagram story or whatever.
Yep.
Um, and they were like, these little drunk white girls would come up to me and play little this. Who the fuck is
Who
little
the
this?
fuck is that?
Play little that. Who the
This little baby.
and
Who's
that's when I
that?
knew. I shook my head and I decided that night I quit. I can't.
I can't do this right. 'Cause I don't know who.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was 6 years old, and they're like, play something else. This is old. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I'm retiring. And I did. I retired that night. I
Yeah.
retired to
I don't
rap.
blame you. I don't blame you
Yeah.
because it's totally ruined it, and that's why some of these old school guys are coming at them because they're just like y'all ain't saying nothing, you
Yeah, but
know?
you know what? Like I don't want to say it's ruining it because that's their stuff.
Yeah,
Like we sound like the old heads now,
we
where
do.
it's like, but back in my day, they didn't
Get off my
mumble.
lawn.
You could understand every word. Back in my day, you
Yeah,
actually had the sample beats. You used to dig in the crates and find the vinyl and
right.
shit like that. And now it's just auto tune. They could sing. Rex in effects is in effect in a record. It's just shit like that. You know what I
You're
mean? Now we
right.
sound like the old heads.
You're right.
So
I
it's
am
just
at that
we don't
point.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a friend Evan who he DJs. He lives in Chicago now, and same thing. Like the last time I remember hanging with him was at that Saint Bar or whatever that bar is off of Frankfurt under the bridge, and I just remember thinking the whole time we were dancing, we were like, "What is this?" He's like, "Yo, it's just messed up my whole flow," and I'm like, "I know." I'm like, "I can't. What is this?" So we just got so pissed we stopped dancing, and everybody was like, "Why are you so mad?" I'm like, "Because you can't go from such and such to this song, and now I'm fucking pissed." So yeah, we were
You
totally get off that lawn.
all those songs are around like 70 beats per minute, 75, 80 beats per minute. So you can't
Mhm.
blend anything else. You just can't blend it.
It
So
doesn't
they
flow.
I'm gonna be like, God damn it, I gotta fucking pick. Go fuck yourself with it.
And that's why it's like my friend who loves going to bachata on Thursday night, she's made me have a love now for like Latin music a little more so because I feel like that's something that I'll never be off beat with because for some reason I feel like I could just go back to a basic two step and be like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. You're back
You're
home.
back.
No matter
Yeah.
circle you
No,
circle.
there's no competition, especially when it's nice on a July and you're on the Mushulu. I mean, come on, you can't beat it. That's the one thing I'll miss. Well, we all miss right now is social dancing, obviously, because every now and then I'll find some nice I just love the look of ballroom dancing, but I did try it for like 5 weeks on like a Groupon thing, and I realized that not only does it make me feel fit, there's something about it. It just felt very disciplined, and I am not a planner. I'm not very routine, so it's like that was the first time I really felt locked into something. And people always say I should lead, but I don't know what the hell that means because at the end of the day, if you have me going out there and freestyle, I'm like I don't know what to do, I just know how the music makes me feel. And but yeah, during quarantine, like I said, I was asking people too, do you realize that when you had all that time to sit, I don't know if you were sitting or dealing with kids virtual learning or whatever, what did you ever look back and think like, damn, if this hadn't happened, I probably would have did this. Like a lot of people are like, I had plans to travel this year. Was there anything really you really had planned that you can't do now until next year, or was it
I,
just whatever?
I would say the major concern was the football games, and
Hmm.
we all look forward to getting. That's the easy answer. When this all kind of hit, I would say the concerts again. I miss going to my shows. It's something that I would bring the kids to. I
Yeah.
bring concerts. I don't give a shit what people think about it. There's kids there. There's old 40-year-olds, previous stoners. You know what I mean, that are now second generation music. So I
Yeah.
miss shows. But honestly, when it hit, um, that was kind of the start of my fishing season. My fishing season starts in April.
Hmm.
And they were like social distance. I'm like, shit, I go fishing by myself all day. Like, if
I've been
anything, these are
social distancing.
yeah, these are gonna keep the beaches clear of riffraff and give me some more elbow room. So it didn't affect that part of my life and that time frame. No, I mean, I was okay. I was good. I was good.
Yeah, same. Because I think that the saying that I've seen is like people like myself who are like natural homebodies. This didn't do nothing to us. Like we were all like, we just feel justified. Good. I don't like being around a lot of people. Good. I should be washing your hands anyway. Good. Like that's how I felt. And then
Yeah,
August came, and it was like, all right, I can't stand being here. Like I got
yeah,
sick of being in the same space, working online in the same spot on the couch.
yeah.
Everything started to drive me crazy. So eventually I kind of gave in because my girlfriends were hanging out at the beach and I'm just like, why are you at the beach? I'm like, how many of you are there together? I'm like, what are you doing? Did you wear your mask? And finally they just like, let's just meet up at Jerry's, just like three or four of us. And they were like, well, space out. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I went, and it was weird, at first, because I had forgotten the whole routine of the trains. At the time, the trains were just starting to go back to their normal schedule. Um, so we hung out, and it was great, but I was still kind of a little bit on edge because I hadn't been really out. And yeah, it really was fine up until when I physically was trying to get out and get acclimated. And then you just realize like everybody's wearing masks now, and it's so weird. It's almost Gail said something about Black Mirror, and I'm like, I'm not watching it. I'm like, no, I'm not watching Black Mirror.
What is this?
Black Mirror, it's some kind of show that's like, once he said Twilight Zone, I'm like, Gail, I don't like scary shows, but
Me
it's
neither.
it's
Me neither.
it's one of those things. A lot of people say it's kind of hard not to watch it. Like, it's one of those shows that kind of sucks you in,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of terrified because I just like to laugh. And then, my addiction this year has been Netflix, like food cooking shows. Um, Cooking with cannabis became a fascination because I'm like, how do you cook with hemp? How do you with Khalees? So it's called
Are,
Cooking with Cannabis.
are you making me brownies someday?
No, but here's the thing though. I'm telling you how many small dishes now that they made look so pretty that I thought to myself, I'm like, you can do that with weed? And then, the breakdown of, whether it has THC in it or if it's hemp. And now I know that there's all those differences, but there's
Yo,
just fascinating things.
give me a Rice Krispie treat. I'm good. You don't gotta make it fancy. You don't gotta make it fancy. If it gets the job done, it gets the job done.
Look, I started liking this line called Sunday Scaries, which is hemp gummy hemp candies, and it helps me when I start feeling anxious or if I get incredible ADHD. So it's like it did help me chill out. So I do recommend Sunday Scaries. It's something online. It's not too ridiculously priced if you do it monthly. So that was something I kind of gravitated. Was there anything habits that you developed while being in quarantine, or you were pretty much the same? Because I know that was one of mine, was hemp candy. I was like, never thought I would, but I needed it every now and then.
It's
People were
nah.
baking banana bread was a trend. Like, I'm baking freaking banana bread. What the freak is that?
No, I kind of, in that respect, I wasted my quarantine time. Dudes are coming out of quarantine speaking another language. I'm like, what the fuck? What the hell?
You got time.
Yeah.
Oh.
My man Karate Mark is in the best shape of his life because he's doing all virtual classes and
Mhm.
cleared out the living room, and he was doing Zoom classes. And here I am, like, eating bite-sized, fun-sized Snicker bars, left on Halloween the year before. My fat, like, I didn't work out. I wasted my entire quarantine time.
He's
Learned
like,
a
what
new
did I do?
skill. I could have played the guitar. I could have done something, and I just wasted it. Wasted it.
It's funny how quick it happened because next thing I knew, when it was September and it was my birthday, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do. Everybody's like, have you planned? And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm like, oh my God. So it's like the year did skyrocket once you were settled in quarantine. I have to admit, like, I'm sitting there going, yo, I don't know what day it is. You know how so many people said days are starting to blend, like they really are starting to blend.
Yeah.
Because I set up chats with people and had everything on my phone, and next thing you know, it was 4 o'clock, and I'm like, what the freak did I do? Like, I just sat here. Next thing you know, it's 4 p.m. and it's dark, and I'm like, where
Yeah.
did my day go? you
Yeah.
know? But it's weird. It's one of those things. And lastly, I definitely want to ask you, do you have any regrets in general? Like, I know I have a few about dropping out of UArt. So it's like that was one of the things I wish I hadn't done. But do you have any like regrets in general about, I don't know, at your age now?
Again, how much time you got? You know that Sinatra song "My Way." Like, regrets, I had a few, but
Yeah.
not the met. No, I'm the exact opposite.
One,
um,
two, three.
I think, yeah, taking myself too seriously. Like, the older you get, to realize this shit don't matter. You know,
hmm
isn't that true? Like, you realize, like, this shit don't matter. You get to a
Yeah.
certain, like, and it's that age, and people used to tell me, like, growing old is a gift, and the older you get, the more you realize that things don't, you start to sweat the little shit a lot less. And I never knew what they meant until I got to that age, and then you realize this shit don't matter.
hmm
Keep keeping grudges in life. I mean, like,
Yeah.
really,
Why?
Uh, you start to see some of some of your old high school friends didn't make it. You get to see some people your age didn't make it, and they're going off young. I mean, I'm not 60 years old, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
from that aspect. But you start to realize what's important in life and what isn't. And I wish that I spent a lot in my younger years. I spent a lot more time worrying less about what other people thought, or
Same.
other people happy, or not staying really true to yourself. But then something, regrets, when you look back at them, regrets are lessons in life. Like sometimes you just got to go through shit to understand shit.
You're
And if
right.
you don't, you have to know what the struggle is. This is a credo that I live by. I absolutely live by. When people are struggling, I tell them to embrace the struggle.
Mm,
Enjoy it, because it is the cornerstone of your foundation, that is your personality. You show me somebody who hasn't struggled, or hasn't made mistakes in their life, or hasn't worked for things that they've really wanted, and I'll show you somebody that's their foundation is weak. You ever see somebody that was just handed everything, or that didn't make any mistakes, or bailed out of everything?
please. No.
In the minute they hit any sort of adversity, they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
So you can look back and at regrets, and certainly I have more than my share. But also too, I look at them like those are lessons, and the good lessons in life aren't learned easy; they're learned the hard way.
Hmm.
You have to go through those things in order to come out the other side and be a better person. Because if you do not go through that tunnel and come out the other side, it means you don't know what that tunnel is, and the next time it happens, you will be ill prepared for it. Um, and or you simply weren't strong enough to make it. You know, there was a time in my life where I lost my business. I'm holding a 2-year old, and I'm unemployed, and don't know how I'm going to put food on the table. The house gets foreclosed on. I mean, like people kind of judge a book by its cover and don't realize that people struggle, and I've struggled. I've never gotten too deep into it, nor will I get too deep into it. But there have been dark times.
Hmm.
I lost my brother to opioid addiction. I lost my business. Practically disowned by my family for a couple years. And everybody worth has got a story, sure, but is that story really worth reading? And if you read it, can you take something away from it? And those are the strong people there.
Well, I appreciate that because segue into whatever questions you want to ask me because at this point, I feel like I've already talked too much myself. But if you have anything you want to throw my way, feel free.
Well, you mentioned being in the suburb. I can't remember. We've been talking for a while. I can't remember whether it was on air or off air,
Hmm.
about moving to the city. And there was a point in time where I was a little sheltered. You kind of mentioned that you were a little sheltered, and your dad was telling you about all this awful shit that goes on in the city. And like the city for me when I moved to Philadelphia was a discovery. And, I look at pictures of myself prior to moving to Philly, and I don't really recognize myself. I don't recognize that guy. And it wasn't until I moved to Philadelphia and was alone and had to start from scratch. Man, there's something natural and organic about starting from scratch, that you learn about who you really are. So what are some of your takeaways about moving to the city, and how has Philadelphia affected you on a personal level?
Well, I feel like, especially when I was at UArts and I was at Pine, that one and only year, freshman year, I definitely was. I was very, I was bolder then. Because I think about some of the stuff like I would walk at night and meet people and hang and just some random dude I remember I had coffee with. That could have ended up bad. Like I could have gotten killed, but I had no fear of the city. I think because also too I aced my audition so well to get into UArts that I had never been in the city that long, and I was so proud of myself that I think I walked all the way up to like freaking Liberty Bell and back because I had so much energy. I was so hyped. I was so proud of myself. I just didn't have any fear, and I kind of missed that girl. Um, and I think once life started happening, and like I said, being isolated, I think the natural instinct is always to want to go back home to be safe. Once you feel like, like, okay, I've gotten a little too crazy. I need to go back to sanity. But it's also that my father always kind of put that fear of God in me about the city. So I think that he was just scared of letting me grow up, basically, because my sister was total opposite. My sisters were 5 years apart, and she's always kind of just did her own damn thing. And I think he hated that. So I think now that I can look at it now, I can just say he just wanted to kind of control me and keep me intact because my sister was like always gone.
Mm.
So I think now I think the city just makes me not feel self-conscious about myself. And I think somehow as I've gotten older, I've kind of slowly reverted back to that. Instead of being like proud of myself and bold, now I've kind of I'm trying to fight from going back into that shell from being home so long. Um, so yeah, the freedom because I just remember that day of just auditioning, and I remember thinking like I killed those monologues, kick ass, and I was like, I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just gonna walk, and I just started walking. And now I look back at it, and I'm just like, where'd she go? You know what I mean? Where'd that girl go? I mean, when you see me on Twitter talking a whole lot of crap, but I mean that's usually where the bold side comes out because I know no one can see me. No one can really, no one knows really who I am. So it's like Twitter, I kind of, you know, shout out to athletes I know that will never talk to me just because I want the reaction, but I don't get it all the time. Well, no, Mike did follow me, but it's one of those situations. It's fun, but I think that's the only side I've allowed out of myself, and I've felt really comfortable. And I need to go back to that. I think being isolated and being the baby of the family is kind of like I'm getting tired of that that mentality. It's
Mm.
like time to grow up. Put the big girl panties on now.
Mm. What's a hobby or a passion you think you would have been good at, but you never had the time or never put effort into exploring?
Hobby. Um, that's too funny because I'm trying to. I forgot what the hell a hobby is. Honestly, I never really. Well, when I was younger, I know I used to love to write stories. I used to write a lot when I was younger, and create my own little characters. So that kind of side of my creativity, I wish I could give it back to. Like a lot of that creative streak, honestly, has been dead for a while. So I feel like part of me just needs an outlet, and I think anything involving writing, music. I do love to sing. I mean, I'm not a professional, but I like to sing. So I like karaoke so much. And stuff like that, stuff that involved me getting out my energy pretty much became my hobby because I never really had the confidence to believe I could do it full time because it is expensive to act all the time and audition all the time and get to things on time. So I guess my hobby was just kind of daydreaming and kind of doing anything that involved music and writing and acting. I guess my hobby was just kind of creating my own little world. You know, it just felt better. I just didn't have to deal with anything. The reality was just boring or sad or just, I always compared myself a lot too. So I'm working on that because what they say comparison is the thief of joy or something. It takes away from who you could be, and I think it took me a long time to figure out who I was.
Yeah,
So, yeah. So hobbies just for me was always just doing something like that, something creative.
nice. Trying to think of another one.
I know. I was like, no pressure. I think I just had five in the beginning because there were certain people I wanted to talk to today, but everybody's kind of rescheduled. So I'm like, I ended up talking to
Well,
my
I'm glad I could fill that time for you.
No, I know. I'm just glad we actually connected because, like I said, I'm like anybody at this point when I'm ready to set up, I'm like, come on. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, I mean, that's why I did like Birds of Feather, like I said, going back to the theme was to understand that we're all kind of the same because I've learned a lot, even more about even my bestie today because, we look at life a lot differently because we're in our 40s now. And there's certain things now that I thought that she would think differently than me, and she didn't really. So I feel like even with you and Gail, both, I think you guys have both kind of felt the way I felt in certain things. Um, I mean, obviously not totally the same, but I think we've all been on that kind of same vibe with this whole year, trying to
yeah.
learn to discover yourself, you know, or just chill out because I mean, what else you gonna do? I mean, you don't want to get sick, but you
The
know,
nice format of like this is a couple times during this chat, I've had to remind myself like this is being recorded, so it feels natural. It's just
I know, yeah. I had her kept looking at the corner. I'm like, oh, that's right. I have to edit this later. And that's a whole nother thing. I'm learning too to re-edit this stuff so it's not as long. But I thank you so much for doing it though. I appreciate you.
I'm happy you invited me to do it.
Yes, and I hope to this will get colorful, I've noticed as I've signed on a couple more people later in the week. I have no idea what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
So this should be really interesting as the week goes on.
Good.
But it's helping me though, because working online is not it doesn't keep me engaged. So it's like I feel like that's what I needed. I just needed a day off from that and then to just I don't know, we get to learn my friends and learn people who I don't talk to, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I thank you and anybody who is watching this once this is edited, thank you very much for joining Birds of a Feather. That's ERock. I'm AJ, Suburban Princess. And hopefully in the future episodes, this will get even more exciting. And hopefully we can talk about some Eagles football soon, like I usually have with this podcast. And hopefully it's all good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.